at JF McMullen. It's where you can follow John McMullen. And, of course, you can hear him every day talking NFL with us here on the Sports Bash. Mike Gill, Ryan Rothstein, as we take you till 6 tonight. Bobby Marks talks NBA playoffs with us in the 5 o'clock hour. Stick around for Bobby. He was at the Sixers and Nets game last night. He'll give us his perspective on this series moving forward. Also, Golden State, a loser last night, at home, up 31.
Crazy.
And now they're out DeMarcus Cousins indefinitely.
Man, you got to give – I love the Clippers. You got to respect their fight. They're not playing with much, and Lou Williams is just making it rain out there, and Patrick Beverley's the savage.
Landry Shamet,
of course.
From way downtown, bang.
Shamet for 3, good.
Game winner last night.
Love it. Savage.
Howie Roseman talks today. John McMullen was there. And, of course, you can get more at 97.3ESPN.com. Let's get into football at 4 with Johnny Mack here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. John, my friend, how are you?
Doing well, yeah. How about the ex-Sixer with the dagger for the Clippers?
Big 3.
He's a stud, man.
You know
He's
what the
going to be.
Sixers could use? Landry Shamet.
They really could. Can we get him back?
Well, Sixers came back. You got to give them credit.
Yeah, they could use a nice 3-point shooter, though. That Tobias Harris would have been a nice. Oh, wait, they got him. All right, let's see what's going on with the football world. You wrote about this at 97.3ESPN.com. I want to get your take and see if you were surprised at all. Fletcher Cox confirming surgery, hopes to be ready for training camp.
No, not surprised at all. We had last time we saw Fletcher was on clean-out day, and he had a walking boot on.
Would he have been able to play? Would he have played?
You know, I doubt it. I doubt he would have played in the NFC Championship game. You remember he got hurt against Saints. He was kind of in and out of that game. I just wrote about it. I think it was 40. He played 42 of, I think, 77 defensive snaps in that game, and he kept coming in and out and trying to fight through it. Ultimately, yeah, if Alshon Jeffrey catches that football, they move on. I don't think you have Fletcher Cox for the NFC Championship game. And remember, you're also not going to have Brandon Brooks, who was injured early against the Saints. So it probably would have made it much more difficult, although the Eagles would have been really, really confident going into that potential game. Obviously, it doesn't matter. But, no, I don't think he would have played in a potential NFC Championship game.
You know, he hopes to be ready by training camp here. He said he was thrilled to have Vinny Curry back and possibly Chris Long. But I want to just get – I mean, not that I'm saying, hey, he's going to slow down, but at what point does Fletcher Cox start to show that he's losing a step?
Well, I don't think it's coming soon. I mean, he keeps ascending as a player. Last season, I don't think there's any question that was his best season. As a professional, I thought he was the second best defensive tackle in the football behind Aaron Donald. I don't know if you could ever reach those heights, but he's really good. And I don't see any indication of that yet. I think he's still on the ascent as a player. I think getting Malik Jackson in here will help him more than anything else. I think it'll go back to what he had early when Tim Jernigan got here before the injuries piled up on him. If you remember how effective they were early in the 2017 season. If anything, I think Jackson will help him a little bit. So I still think you have some time in that so-called ascent section of Fletcher Cox's career before the descent begins.
Hopefully, because you forget, when was Fletcher drafted? 2012?
Yeah, same year as Vinny. So that was a heck of a draft if you think about it. So, yeah, I mean, he's a veteran player, but keeps himself in good condition and even better condition now than he used to. In fact, he talked about that last year, how he cut out the junk food. And how difficult that was for him. So you see him now, he's just in tremendous shape already. As you mentioned, he's probably not going to do much this spring. And not a concern as far as anytime you have a player of his stature. I talk about it all the time. I don't think it's that important to be out there in May. So as long as he's ready to go in August, I think if you're listing the potential problems of the Eagles, boy, Fletcher Cox is going to be way, way down on that list.
It's not important to be there in May unless you're sconce shopping.
Yeah, and Chip Kelly. I mean, there are different.
You don't remember that?
Stages.
Staunch.
Yeah, Kerry was.
Yeah, no, it was Ryan. Kerry Williams, when he made the excuse that he was out buying sconces.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
The fans were all over.
I mean, there are different. That was Chip's. Chip just got here. I think it was his first year with Kerry. I'm not sure. I have to double check that. But when you are a new player or there's a new coach, and in Kerry's case, he was a free agent signing, you probably should be here. And it is more important in those stages. But if you're a veteran player that's been in an organization and the coach has been here for a while, now Doug has, this will be his fourth season, it's not that important, to be honest.
We're talking Eagles and NFL with John McMullen now today. Howie Roseman stressing depth at the draft, and he said today that it's all about adding depth in the draft, getting as many players as possible. So that sounds like they're still exploring ways to add more picks.
Yeah, and I think that stems, I mentioned it a lot, from what they gave up to get Carson Wentz a couple years ago. They've still been recovering, and they haven't had a normal amount of draft picks. This will be the first year, really. They're back into a level they're comfortable with. And if anything, I would think they would want to add more for that reason. And then the second is, and you saw the Russell Wilson deal, these quarterback deals aren't getting cheaper. So ultimately, when Carson does sign his deal, you're going to have to start developing younger players in a quicker fashion, because they're going to have to be the depth guys. They're going to have to be more important to the back end of the roster. You got to get them up to speed more quickly, because you need those cost-effective contracts when you're allocating that money to the quarterback position.
Yeah, and I know we touched on it a little bit yesterday, but Carson Wentz back issue still getting there, he said. Now, that Russell Wilson deal that you just referenced, we'll get into that in a little bit, but the Eagles have to be looking, what they're going to do with Wentz and how that deal gets done, because once that deal gets done, that really hampers your ability to add pieces around them.
Yeah, there's no question. It's a different phase. You can do it, but it's easier when you have a quarterback on a rookie deal, and Seattle's the perfect example of that. They were the best team in football when they hit on Russell Wilson and had him under his rookie deal, and the talent has slowly eroded as he signed his second contract, and this is his third contract. So you do have to be more inventive. You have to go about things a different way. And these contracts, I mean, you think about Derek Carr signing his contract at $25 million. He was the highest paid. We're already up to $35. That's how quickly it's ascending. And the next guy, it was Kirk Cousins, then it was Matt Ryan, then it was Aaron Rodgers, then it was Russell Wilson. I think because of the injuries, the Eagles will get a bit of a break with Carson Wentz. I don't think they're going to have to make him $36 million and pay him more than Russell Wilson. But I got news for you. If they can get a team-friendly deal, and by team-friendly deal, I'm talking average annual value $27, $28 million, I would pull the trigger on that today. I'm not sure the Wentz camp would.
John, you tweeted out earlier the Roseman Douglas skinny that free agency was important, no glaring needs, and they feel like they're ready to play today with some big additions.
They could play a game today,
right? I mean, what does that what does that say about the draft? Are they going to get a little crazy, or is it, it's just interesting to me that they come out and say that.
Well, it's a little tongue-in-cheek because guys like Fletcher and Brandon, for instance, aren't ready to play. But in theory, they do have the roster cobbled together where there's no longer any obvious need. If you don't bring in Jordan Howard, you had an obvious need at running back. If you don't bring in Malik Jackson, you have an obvious need at defensive tackle. If you don't bring in Deshaun Jackson, you have an obvious need at receiver, Andrew Sandeo at safety, on and on and on. So I do think they did a pretty good job in free agency of making sure you don't have to reach in the draft because the last thing you want to do is, even if it's subconscious, it's saying, boy, we really need a running back. And you're going to take a running back you don't like as much as a defensive lineman, for instance. That's when you start making big mistakes. And I think the Eagles have done a good job letting the draft board come to them. So whatever happens, they could just take the best player on their board, and they don't really have to be worried about a plug-and-play player.
So does those signings at running back and wide receiver, does that allow them to go that route in the draft, knowing they have that quote-unquote, it's not a security blanket, but like you said, they have those positions filled and they're confident with how they filled them, so now they don't feel as concerned to take them in the draft? Or do they not worry about those positions?
And I think that's why I think they can take any position. And now as we get closer, now people are thinking receiver is a more likely position. Obviously, on paper, they don't need a receiver because they brought in Deshaun Jackson. They have brought Nelson Aguilar back. But if that's the best player at 25, yeah, they could take a receiver and they could move Nelson Aguilar or just wait for him to leave in free agency next year. And that's why you want to fill those holes in free agency and why it was important to get these players. It's not to say you're done. If the Eagles can improve on Sandeo or improve on Jordan Howard, they'll do it. But there's no glaring need any longer, and that's what they were trying to say.
The draft is coming up. It's next Thursday, and our draft party will be live at the Wonder Bar in Atlantic City, and you can be there. Get the app on your phone, and we'll send you the keyword tomorrow at 3 o'clock to be a part of that draft show. And in the draft, speaking today, Cardinals GM Steve Keim saying that they don't know what they're going to do with the number 1 overall pick, but that seems to be Huey.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. But there's two levels of, there were people out there saying the Cardinals made their decision on February 11th. Well, no, they didn't.
Well, when they hired Kingsbury to be the coach, they don't hire him to coach Nick Bosa. They hire him to coach Kyler Murray.
Well, you would think so, and that's why people have speculated. And not only that, I've talked about a lot. I think it's a huge mistake. I think we just talked about need, and then you couple it with the fact that this is a team that already traded up in last year's draft to get a top 10 quarterback. Yeah, Arizona's a mess right now, but I guess if you did hire the guy, and that's the only quarterback he can coach, and he can't coach Josh Rosen, I guess you got to take him. I guess you also got to plan on heading to the unemployment office, though, if you're Steve Keim, because you're done.
Yeah. And we've touched a little bit on that whole scenario and why it's so bizarre. I mean, he was the guy who pulled the trigger last year on Rosen, unless he makes some blockbuster trade that involves Rosen that gets them blockbuster players and Murray here.
Well, yeah, but that would be pulling a rabbit out of his hat. I mean, you've sort of telegraphed and forced yourself into this box or corner where people know you're taking Kyler Murray, and if you're taking Kyler Murray, you got to trade Josh Rosen, and that's why if they get a second-round pick, they'll be doing well. They're certainly not going to get multiple picks, and they're not going to get players on top of it. And that's textbook bad, no matter how you shake it out. That's not what you do. But, when you're going to finance class and you're learning about stocks and bonds, nobody teaches you to buy high and sell low, and that's what they're doing.
Right. They drafted, of course, Rosen last year in the first round of the draft. Seahawks signed Russell Wilson to a 4-year, $140 million. Now, in football, don't go with those numbers, but $65 million guaranteed signing bonus with $107 million of the $140 in total guarantees. He is the highest paid in the NFL. We'll see how long that. But we see these a lot with Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr and Matthew Stafford. But Russell Wilson, he's deserving of this money, is he not?
Yeah. I mean, I think everybody's deserving.
Well, he's better than all those other guys.
Yeah, Kirk Cousins is deserving because that's what they paid him. But if you look at it, and think about Kirk Cousins, okay, that was free agency last year. So we're talking just over a year. He's the highest paid quarterback. And then you go to Matt Ryan, then you go to Aaron Rodgers, then you go to Russell Wilson. We're already 3 down the road of quarterbacks being the highest paid in the game. And that's just the cost of doing business. And that's what I was talking about with Carson Wentz. You can argue about it, and you can wring your hands about it. But if you have a good quarterback in this league, that's the cost of doing business at that particular position, which is arguably, and Joe Douglas called it today, the most important position not only in football but in sports, and I would agree with him. So I don't have a problem with anybody paying anybody at that particular position. I really don't. Certainly not Russell Wilson. I told you, Mike, how many stories were written between when I told you Seattle's not giving up Russell Wilson, Seattle's paying Russell Wilson? How many stories were written, and then bang, they paid Russell Wilson? You don't give up on quarterbacks like that. You don't give up on Kirk Cousins, never mind Russell Wilson.
Why? What was the delay? Was there a delay, or was that just kind of manufactured, like media drama? And does that impact anything with how the Eagles are going to handle Wentz?
Yeah, that was manufactured. I mean, some of it was from Russell. I mean, the April 15th deadline, that was silly.
Yeah.
Who cares? April 15th. I mean, we just talked about off-season work, and it's voluntary technically. It's not voluntary for quarterbacks, though. Quarterbacks, because of the nature of the position and the leadership aspect of it, they have to be here. They have to be in. So it is a little bit more important, but there was no need to get it done on April 15th. He just wanted it done by then. So from that standpoint, I think it was more the player-driven. But there was no doubt in my mind that Seattle was ultimately going to pay him, and they did.
What is the deal, if anything, like Russell Wilson got? What does that do for Carson Wentz? Help, hurt?
It makes him smile.
Right. I mean, I don't say hurt.
quarterback.
I don't say hurt Wentz. I mean hurt the Eagles. I mean that's what I meant. Does it
it
help
hurt
Wentz, hurt Eagles?
And that's look. There are people, and I just said hand wringing about money. You could say, in Carson's case, all the hand wringing is about health, and I get it. I mean, we're 2 years. He hasn't been able to finish the season now, and he was really even hurt early in his first season. So he's had injuries in all 3 seasons. One's a torn ACL, one's a stress fracture in his back, last 2 seasons. I don't know. To me, when you start talking about injuries and saying, okay, if a guy has a pulled hamstring and he's not coming back and it's 8 weeks, 10 weeks, whatever, then you start talking about durability and does he want to play through certain things. These are significant injuries for Carson Wentz. And then the second part is you can't legislate injuries. So, I mean, you have your quarterback. He's proven to be an MVP-level quarterback when he's healthy. You're going to pay him. It's not going down. It's not going down. The only way it is going down is if he suffers a catastrophic injury this year, an Alex Smith-like injury, a Teddy Bridgewater-like injury. And then, okay, you save $30 million, but you're a bad football team. So, I mean, from the Eagles' standpoint, his price isn't going down unless disaster happens. So from an organization standpoint, you want to get it done as team-friendly as possible. As I said, I don't think you can get more than Russell Wilson right now. But if he has a great season next year, conversation starts at $36 million.
If you're Carson Wentz and the Eagles come to you now, are you telling them, nah, I'll wait till next year?
Yeah, I mean, that's really up to the player. Yeah, if he wants to bet on himself, as I said, if he has a big season, the conversation starts at $36 million. And so if he does want to bet on himself, yeah, he could certainly do that. If you want the security and you're willing to accept $28 million, $29 million, which I think you could certainly live on, then the Eagles should be interested in that. I don't know if they would be, but they should be, because I can't say this enough. The price is not going down.
He's John McMullen. We'll have plenty more on the NFL offseason. The draft is on the way just a week from Thursday, and we'll be live at the Wonder Bar in Atlantic City for this year's draft party. The Eagles pick 25th. Follow him at J.F. McMullen. I implore you to. John, take care.
All right, take care, guys.